Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Tom Cooney and I have the pleasure of being your MC for today's event. We are gathered together for the annual Community Foundation of Mississauga's All for Community Speakers event. It looks a little different this year, of course. You're joining us from the comfort and safety of your home or office via Zoom, and we're so glad you could be with us here today for this wonderful event. Now in its 11th year, the All for Community Speaker Series is one of the organization's 3 signature events that promote the Foundation's pillar of community engagement. Let me tell you what's in store for us today. We have 2 speakers whose messages are bound to resonate with you. Dr. Natasha Sharma, a clinical therapist and author of the Kindness Journal, and Daniel Lewis, an entrepreneur known for Tea by Daniel. They'll both bring inspiring messages to you today. We also welcome Megan Nichols of the Mississauga Food Bank, a Community Foundation grant recipient, to share how their mission has supported families right across Mississauga. We'll have a question and answer period for our speakers, so please feel free to put your questions in the chat box during the session. I'd also like to confirm that this session is being recorded so that it can be viewed again in the future. My own history with the Foundation goes back to 2004, and I've been involved in one way or another ever since. I've been a member of the board and have acted as vice chair. I currently have the pleasure of chairing the endowment committee. I'm a corporate partner and an ambassador for the valuable work that the Foundation does. I'm also pleased to say that I'm a donor, and through endowment funds, my family has ensured that we can have an impact here in Mississauga through our personal philanthropy. The Community Foundation is fortunate to have talented volunteers contributing to the mission and the work of the Foundation. They provide their time, their talent, and treasure in a multitude of ways and committees, and we thank them for the many contributions that help make this foundation a success. I'd now like to pay tribute to the board of directors of the Community Foundation and thank them for their leadership. They are Erica Techlitz, chair of the board, Vice Chair and Secretary Helen Siebel, Treasurer Patrick Johnston, Paul Bernard, Stephen Mattis, Daniel McCartney, and Jeff Rolke. I'd now like to introduce our President and CEO, Anne-Marie Pierce. Anne-Marie is dedicated to advancing the work of the Community Foundation and to her personal mission of inspiring stakeholders to enrich communities and change lives. Please help me welcome Anne-Marie Pierce.
Hello and welcome. On behalf of our board, volunteers, and staff, welcome to the 11th annual All for Community Speakers event. This year has been one of great challenges as we contended with the impact that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought. And as we enter spring, we are so pleased to bring a timely program to you today. This event has built a strong reputation of engaging speakers with thoughtful and compelling messages. And this year is no different as we welcome Dr. Natasha Sharma and Daniel Lewis. The work that the Foundation does would simply not be possible without the corporate partners that we have on board with us. Since the program's inception, the Foundation has had the good fortune to have the support of our corporate community. Our corporate partners play a leading role in supporting and sustaining our Foundation. This financial support is an investment in helping to build a stronger, more vital Mississauga. So let me tell you who these generous partners are. At the champion level, Kaiser Mason Ball, LLP, Asante Wealth Management. And I'm pleased to say that this year we have a new champion partner, Novo Nordisk Canada. At the ambassador level, we have Bayshore Home Health, Lakeside Process Controls, Mississauga Board of Trade, Farnham and Company, and MNP LLP. And our advocate partner is Pallet Vallow LLP. Last year, you stood beside us and helped us to weather an incredibly difficult year and allowed us to make an impact in our community, and we remain grateful to each and every one of you. I would like to thank our 2021 speaker event sponsors. They are the title sponsor, Novo Nordisk Canada, speaker sponsors, TD Wealth and Laino 183, and attendee gift sponsor, Charity Accounts. At the Community Foundation of Mississauga, we are privileged to play the role that we do in contributing to the ongoing success of our community. Our roles of community convening, endowment building, and grant making are important roles. Thanks to the support of our donors, friends, and partners, the Community Foundation has made significant contributions to the vitality of our community. Over the past year, our granting role was important. Our regular granting round supported charities across Mississauga. And we also granted COVID emergency funds through a combination of funds we raised and federal funds. These monies translated into grants to charities dealing with the impact of the pandemic and support for our community's most vulnerable citizens. This meant that an additional $2 million in grants helped Mississauga organizations to support critical needs, including food, health, safety, social inclusion, PPE, learning, mental health and wellness, secure web conferencing, and computer equipment. To the community partners and grant recipient organizations that are here with us today, you have our sincere thanks for the role that you played and continue to play in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you for the vital work that you do. Please see your program where we have listed the many agencies who have received grants this past year. I am pleased to report that we have reached a significant milestone in our granting history. With a total of $3 million in grants across all sectors last year, we reached a total of $20 million since our granting began. As a 360-degree grant maker, the entire charitable community benefits from our foundation's grants. Knowing the needs that emerged over the last year, the impact of these grants is profound. And to our fund holders, thank you for supporting our community. Together, we have the privilege of building and creating something special in our community foundation. Your vision has helped to create an endowment that we have today of $22 million, ensuring that community needs can be supported through timely, essential grants. Our mission and vision have never been more important, and I know that your contributions will be essential to our ongoing success. Today is about community, our community, and I thank you all for being here to support us. Your work as advocates and ambassadors speaks to the collective goodwill and desire to create something extraordinary for our community. I would like to thank today's MC, Tom Cooney, for guiding us through today's program. I would also like to thank our team for the hard work that went into today's event. Thank you to the talented Speakers Event Committee, supported by Melody Jackson and Pauline Fabesna, for your roles in the All for Community Speakers event. And finally, thanks to all of you who contribute to our success, to our donors, partners, volunteers, and friends who continually support and uplift us. You make your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. That was CEO of the Community Foundation of Mississauga, Anne-Marie Pierce. Novo Nordisk Canada is today's presenting speaker. In addition, they are a new corporate partner, and Novo Nordisk has established a new granting program with the Community Foundation aimed at combating diabetes and obesity in our community. We thank Novo Nordisk for acting as today's presenting sponsor. To speak on behalf of Novo Nordisk Canada, I am pleased to introduce Adam Marcella, Director of External Affairs, to bring greetings.
Thank you, Tom and Anne-Marie, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam Marcella, and I'm the Director of External Affairs at Novo Nordisk in Canada. Since the beginning of our company almost 100 years ago, our purpose has been to drive change to defeat diabetes and other serious chronic diseases. As a foundation majority-owned company, we're serious about our commitment to investing in chronic disease prevention. Diabetes or prediabetes affect 1 in 3 Canadians. 1 in 2 young adults will develop diabetes in their remaining lifetime. Like diabetes, the prevalence of obesity in Canada has increased significantly over the past 3 decades. Today, more than 7 million Canadians are living with obesity. We recognize that the medicines we make are only part of the response to diabetes and obesity, and we are dedicated and determined to improving the lives of Canadians affected by these diseases through the advancement of anti-discrimination and prevention efforts. 2021 is an incredibly important year as it marks the 100th anniversary of the discovery of insulin in Canada. And there is no greater example of Canadian ingenuity in the field of medical research than this significant discovery at the University of Toronto 100 years ago. We recently announced that we are continuing our long partnership with the University of Toronto to improve the lives of people living with or at risk of getting type 2 diabetes and obesity by making a $20 million donation, which is the largest that Novo Nordisk Canada has made in its history, and one of the largest private sector investments in public health research in Canadian history. The University of Toronto is generously matching our donation with $20 million of their own for a total investment of $40 million to create the Novo Nordisk Network for Healthy Populations based at the University of Toronto in Mississauga. The Novo Nordisk Network for Healthy Populations will leverage the expertise of the Dalla Lana School of Public Health and the Temerty Faculty of Medicine. This unique partnership builds on a shared commitment to defeating diabetes and is an example of how public and private organizations can collaborate on life-saving medical discoveries in support of public health. On behalf of Novo Nordisk, we are pleased to sponsor today's event and to support the Community Foundation of Mississauga. The themes of kindness, well-being, entrepreneurship, and innovation are important values which are also reflected in our culture and anchored in the work that we do every day. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Adam Marcella of Novo Nordisk Canada. Welcome aboard to you and your firm. The foundation is honored to have a partnership of Kaiser Mason, the partnership of Kaiser Mason Ball, longtime friend. In fact, since the Community Foundation's inception in 2001, when Colin Mason was on the founding advisory committee, the firm has continued to be a very strong supporter of the organization. They continue to partner at our highest corporate partner level, ensuring that the Community Foundation can continue to carry out its mission and reach its vision of a strong, vital community that has the resources it needs to ensure quality of life for everyone. At our foundation, volunteers from Kaiser Mason Ball sit on numerous committees and have served on the board. Today, we have invited Kaiser Mason Ball to introduce our first speaker. Please help me welcome Susanna Winsborough, a Community Foundation volunteer and a partner with Kaiser Mason Ball.
Thanks, Tom. Dr. Natasha Sharma is a former therapist turned entrepreneur. She is the creator of the best-selling The Kindness Journal, co-creator of The 8-Hour Therapist, and a Canadian TV media personality. She is a leading international authority on the psychology of relationships, parenting, and happiness. Her TEDx talk, Why What We Feel Matters More Than What We Think, has over 250,000 views on YouTube and is one of the most popular TEDx talks. Dr. Sharma is a graduate of McMaster University's DeGroote School of Business and completed a master's degree in psychology at Johns Hopkins University, followed by a doctorate in psychology from California Southern University. Since then, she's been devoted to inspiring and helping others to master their own emotional fitness, become emotionally robust, and live their most fulfilling and happiest lives. A widely acclaimed speaker, Dr. Sharma enjoys weaving her clinical knowledge together with her own personal and meaningful stories that help people connect to her words and to the importance of mastering their emotions to achieve optimal emotional health. Please welcome Dr. Natasha Sharma.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. I would have loved to be, I'm sure as you all would, in the theater at the Living Arts Center, as I really love to interact and feed off of my audience, but I have my chat box open, so I want to make sure that everyone out there who would like to make a comment or question, please do so even throughout the presentation if you'd like, because I do scan them as I go along, and I really love to hear from people. So I'm just going to share my screen so that I can get my presentation up. If you give me 1 minute here. Strangely, I cannot find my presentation. Give me 1 more minute. Share screen. There we go. Okay. What am I doing here? View, presenter view. Can everyone see the presentation all right? Hopefully. Okay. And actually, okay. Are you seeing the presentation or are you seeing the Word document? And I can't see chat, unfortunately. This is the first time I'm actually doing the screen share. I might actually stop share. I just think that it's going to be better if I just talk. So little change in plan. So sorry. It's just going to be me. Okay, so I want to start off by saying that, as I mentioned, I'm very happy to be here. I was recently interviewed by a radio station for a show called In Conversation. And it was a deeply personal interview. And I usually don't get these kinds of interviews. I'm usually asked for my advice on tips and strategies and things like that. But, and some of the previous attendees for this type of, for In Conversation have been pretty impressive, like David Mirvish, Peter Mansbridge, Kathleen Wynne. So it was really an honor to be invited to speak or to be interviewed. And one of the questions that I was asked was, what was the turning point for me? What was the turning point for me in my life to where I am now, to what I've accomplished and believing in this sort of positive spirit and mindset and approaching life and the things that I've pursued? And I realized that I don't actually have one, and or at least not what we typically think of as a turning point. And that's not to say that, you know, I haven't had a major life event. I haven't had a near-death experience. I haven't sort of, you know, been caught in a storm and, you know, feared for my life. And those things can be very, very powerful instigators of change in any direction. And there are certainly, you know, noteworthy instances that occur in our life. And major life events like that are naturally turning points for us. But what I learned is then realized is that we don't actually require them in order to live life with a positive attitude and a grateful heart. So I was thinking, how am I going to answer this question? But I realized, you know, that in fact, life is a series of turning points. And I actually had a very relatively happy childhood. You know, it was I think it's important to acknowledge that I had a relatively privileged upbringing, and I'm aware of that and kind of how that has influenced me in my path and where I am. And my parents immigrated to this country from India with nothing, but they educated themselves and they achieved an abundance so that we could have in their minds more. And it certainly wasn't a perfect childhood. You know, my parents' marriage was so-so, not that great. I experienced bullying quite consistently growing up by a member of my own household, actually. And that particular topic became the subject of my dissertation for my PhD. I've been in some bad relationships, like most of us. So these are certainly things that define and are part of my life and my journey, and but they were all relatively manageable. And what I realized is that it's been a series of turning points for me and a collection of instances in time where radical change suddenly happens, sometimes in the tiniest, most imperceptible ways, and other times in these great aha moments, but all part of this divine growth and development that it is to be a human. So I have been a therapist for the past 10 years, and I'm no longer practicing as one, as I'm focusing on a few other things these days. But in my experience as a therapist, I have loosely kind of brought people into three main categories. And the first category is sort of, you know, very, very small percentage of the world, actually. And I would call them, you know, they might be unstable. They might have, you know, thought process and cognitive functioning that's impaired. And they're actually a very small percentage or very serious mental illness, so to speak. And then we have a very, very large group in the middle, which is called stable functioning individuals. And these represent most of us, in my opinion, the majority of people. And they, you know, are very successful. They're happy, they have problems, they manage them, you know, they get promotions, they have families, sometimes they can achieve great things, because really the third category is not really about achievement or fame or what you've acquired. It's about a certain type of way in which you approach life. And that third category is called highest self or highest life. And it is a very tiny percentage, in my opinion, maybe 2% or less of the population. And I've seen probably at this point interacted with maybe close to 3,000 or 4,000 people, even, you know, one-on-one or in groups. And it's a pretty sizable sample to sort of get this analysis from. And a highest self person is not someone who's necessarily of a certain age. In fact, I've often said that children are the original highest level people. because children embody what it is to be a higher level person. They live much for the moment. You know, they have a concept of the past, but they don't dwell on it. They understand the future, but they also don't overthink it or obsess on it. They plan for it, but they are also not terribly people to complain or kind of, see life in an obstacle-oriented way. They see life in a possibility-oriented way. Sure, so what if the water's freezing? I'll jump in. Why don't I try this, that? When we learn to walk, we fall down hundreds of times before we actually learn, but they're not deterred by that. So they are the original highest self people. And I truly believe that we all have the capacity to become higher level people who are possibility oriented, people who remember that the importance of having fun in life and that we're here to enjoy our lives, people who don't complain, people who take their problems in stride and understand that they're a part of their life. They live with a sense of peace, contentment, self-love, and other love. And so I'm here, I guess, today to talk about how we reach that higher self, particularly now with everything that we're going through. Happiness, a key component of happiness, and I've researched this extensively, is the ability to feel hopeful for the future. So how do we feel hopeful for the future when we feel like we can't even plan for the future, when there's so much that's uncertain? And how do we create happiness when we feel not as free? And we're not as free as we used to be with some of the restrictions that we continue to live with and will be for some time. So I want to share with you sort of 5 pearls of inner wisdom is what I call them. And my presentation was really only 5 slides anyway, so we're not missing much by losing out on that PowerPoint presentation. But the first slide was just that basically this first pearl of inner wisdom, which is this: what we focus on expands. So I had a client sort of around the beginning of the pandemic. I stopped practicing around the end of last year, and around April, May, he'd ask me, do you ever get, Natasha, do you ever get down? Do you ever get upset? And I said, well, of course. Do you ever get depressed? He asked me. And I said, well, I mean, my mood can deflate for sure, like anyone else's, but I don't think I ever get depressed the way we've talked about it in our sessions. He said, well, never? And I said, no, I don't, not the way that, we've talked about it. And he said, well, gee, that's really depressing that you don't. Well, how do you do that? How do you stay calm? And I said, well, it's not about not having problems. And it's not about this idea of positive thinking and a positive mindset being this idea that everything is rosy and that everything is perfect. It's not that at all. I have, and people who have a positive mindset, all the same problems in life that people with a different orientation have. Happy people have all the same problems as unhappy people, and they have feelings that are not always positive. They have negative feelings. They feel sad, they feel angry, they feel jealous, they feel what have you. But the difference is, and nobody escapes problems in life, this is clear. They're relative, but it's not a good idea to pretend that they don't exist either. The difficulty comes when we focus constantly on those negatives, because as I said, what we focus on expands. So if we're focusing on what's negative, what's most problematic, what's an issue, particularly when it's in the future, then we're not doing ourselves any good. And that just becomes a mental expansion where it can seem much bigger, much more amplified than it really is. And of course, that affects our mood and how we feel and how we engage with our life. So I'm not suggesting that we ignore problems, but I'm suggesting that we look at our problems as they come to us in our life and not speculate about the ones that might be. And even when we have problems, that we deal with them as best as we can, and then make conscious effort to shift our focus to what is good, whatever is good, not to pretend that problems or negative things are good. Sometimes things are just not good. There's no way to silver line it, or there's no way to spin it. I'm not really advocating for that. What I'm suggesting is acknowledgement and solving of problems while focusing on whatever is good, even if it's really tiny some days, what's good in your life, so that that becomes what expands, because you truly have that control in your thought process. In fact, everything that we are and everything that we do and everything about the way we live and everything about how we experience it is thought. Everything is based on how we process our world, our opinions about it, what conclusions. And when you think about that, that's incredibly powerful that we have that kind of control over how we experience our world and the life that we're living through our own thought process. So I encourage you the next time when you're dealing with problems or when you're thinking of problems, even just now listening to this presentation or afterwards, whatever problems you currently have in your life, ask yourself, is this more of a hassle and a concern for you than truly catastrophic? And aren't you likely to solve that problem in time and find a way to be happy again? And lastly, you're really the type of person who is already strong and able to handle problems because you've handled them in the past. And this will help you make that a reality and really change just how you feel. And that's really what matters most when it comes to our lives. So the second pearl of inner wisdom or point or slide that I was going to show you is focus on what we can control. And we've probably heard a lot of this at this point. And if you haven't, then I'm happy to share it with you today because it's one of the most, all 5 of these things are sort of my top 5 pieces of advice if I could give for how we can really create really positive change in our lives that lasts. And focusing on what we control is so important because that's what we have. We have control over some things, but not all things. And there's one thing we always have control over, and that's ourselves. How we think, how we feel, and how we show up, how we behave, the actions we take, how we interpret the world, and then how we decide we're going to respond to it. I want you to imagine being held in solitary confinement, really extreme negative situation, or even being held captive by a kidnapper, which some people have endured. Talk about a turning point. You would have to develop mental strategies, mind control, and thought control in order to survive under those the worst circumstances imaginable. And certainly none of us is going through that personally ourselves, but we are going through probably some of the most radical changes that any of us in our lifetime and probably our parents' lifetimes have experienced. And although at this point in where we're at, we're quite adjusted, hopefully, we're certainly used to things, it's still very important for us to remember that everything that's going on around us, including this pandemic, everything to do with it is exactly as it should be because it's happening. It's already there. The world is exactly as it should be because it is. And if you stop and take a moment of what that actually says, quite often we get caught up in thinking why it shouldn't be this way. We should have done that. We didn't do this. If only we'd done that, we wouldn't be here. And climate change this, and we dumped stuff in the landfill there. And now we're here, but we're here. And whatever the reasons that we're here, it's supposed to be that way because we're already here. It's already happened. And this can be very freeing because we let go of this expectation that the world should be something other than exactly what it is. It doesn't mean that we can't work to change it. It doesn't mean that we can't learn from the things of our past. It doesn't mean that we can't get involved and get our hands in and actually make change for the future, because we can change the future. But it's very freeing to understand that this is basically the essence of the art of surrendering, letting go, and acceptance, which are very powerful mental tools. Just to add on to that idea of control, what we don't face in our life controls us. So going back to sort of the problems and life's challenges that we all have, whether we are going through a divorce or whether we're dealing with managing a very busy household, or perhaps we're dealing with alcoholism or whatever, there's a myriad of problems. When we don't face them, our problems actually control us. When we face them, they don't control us. So the alcoholic who seeks treatment for his or her alcoholism is no longer controlled by it. The one who doesn't seek any help or treatment is controlled by it. So it's very important that what we face, because a lot of us have difficulty facing problems, and that is and particularly some that are very painful. And that's what it is to be human. But that's part of my work in my field. And when I used to be a therapist, is to help people face and confront problems, even though it's painful and challenging, because it no longer controls us when we do. A lot of people are controlled by what others think of them, which is our reputation. Well, we really have no power over what other people think about. So it really shouldn't be something that we spend our time ruminating about, yet many of us do. There's a brilliant title of a book, and I can't recall the author at the moment, but the title is so incredible that everyone remembers it who's ever read it, or the title, and that is, "What You Think About Me Is None of My Business." And I think it just really hammers home that idea that we are only able to control the perception we have of ourselves. And if we can focus on that, and also the people whose approval we desire, and place stock and value in their opinions of us, then we're in a much better position to be in control, to be empowered about our own personal psychology. I have a story about something that used to control me. It's a personal story about, and for years, actually, this was something that, and it still kind of bugs me if I'm being honest, because I just saw sort of a dangerous driver as I was walking the other day. And I've always had a thing with dangerous drivers. Even before, I have 2 little boys now, so I think of it more, but even before this, I don't know why. And maybe like many of us, and I allowed myself to be very controlled about my own response to it. So people would, as they do on the road, sometimes drive aggressively, sometimes very rudely. We've all probably been cut off before, or even worse, sometimes there are more dangerous situations. And I used to be, make myself really upset about this. And I used to say things to whoever might be listening and willing to listen to me. If I had magical powers, I wish I had them, because I would just remove all the bad drivers from the road. I would just wave my finger and be able to just pick which car, and I'd be like, "You're gone, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone." And they'd never be able to be back on the road. And this higher level person later on, as I realized what that was, and as I was becoming that, would say to myself, "No, if you had magical powers, that's not what you would do." Okay, so then a couple years passed, and I still was having the same kind of reaction, but a little bit pared down. And it was more along the lines of, fine, I don't need magical powers to take everyone off the road. What I need is magical powers to take, give them tickets and make them, give them consequences so that they know they're not going to do this again, and punish them and what have you. And again, that higher self, no, if you were your higher level self, this is not what you would do. And so finally, I realized, I got it eventually, that if I was at my highest level self, I wouldn't be disturbed by it in the first place. And so again, it's just about what we allow to control us, and how we allow that to influence us. So we have total control over that. And again, it doesn't mean that I now like dangerous drivers. It doesn't mean that I may not report one if I see one being really blatantly dangerous. It's about it not controlling me after the fact. Okay, third slide I would have shown you. Don't blame others, ever. So, or the world. So other people, or the world, or the planet, or the universe, or circumstances, anything. In my online program, the 8-Hour Therapist, which everybody here is getting access to very generously, there's an entire course that's dedicated to the perils of blame. And it weakens us. When we blame other people, it weakens us. We put all the accountability on other people. We're not responsible for everything. And yet taking responsibility and being accountable is actually, in my opinion, one of the things as parents, one of the most important things we can teach our children is not to blame other people, and to parent themselves, of course, to be their own parent, but to take accountability and responsibility. It strengthens us, not the other way around. If you are at fault for something, take responsibility, apologize for it, try to make amends, accept the consequences. Maybe there'll be some really dire consequences sometimes if we've done something, if we've taken certain actions. Forgive yourself, learn from it, and move on. And that's just it. If you're not at fault for something, then be accountable at least for how you respond in the moment to those situations. If nothing else, you have control over how you respond. Responsibility, right? If you break it down, responsibility. We have the ability to respond. I'll tell you a little story about my neighbors, which are next door, and they are not the friendliest, and it's just circumstantial that it's this way. And things sort of deteriorated where they, we're not being particularly neighborly, and we kind of let things slide with respect to sort of trespassing issues and some other things. And it got to a point after, I think, nearly 4 years where we sort of had to speak up and say something. There was sort of noise, trespass, there were a myriad of things. And finally, my husband and I spoke up, and we weren't greeted. We did it politely. We were not, it was not received well. And the neighbor, the gentleman in particular, is very aggressive with us, sometimes unprovoked now. I think he stopped lately, but there were times when I'd be out on my deck last summer and he'd just kind of start, I don't know, saying stuff over the fence. And sometimes it was pretty aggressive and rude and just insulting. Now I have a choice here. I have a couple choices. I could throw the ball back at him and just give it to him just as good and be like, you stupid, what, a-hole, you're just a no good, and just get out of my face. And I could match him and meet him at his anger. And I could choose to respond that way. Or I could throw the ball back differently and say, you're really angry now. I get it. I can see that you're really angry now, which isn't admitting to anything of my own to do with it. Just saying, acknowledging that, you're really angry now. Or there's a third option. I could just not respond at all. And I think a lot of people could take the route of, he made me do it. He made me respond this way. I became rude, and yes, I became aggressive. Sometimes things can get really out of control. Like, yeah, he made me punch him because, he said that, and that's what I did. No, it's all up to us. So we have the power to decide how we respond, even in the most difficult of circumstances. Okay. The fourth slide I would have shown you, and the fourth point is unconditional self-love and unconditional self-acceptance is the number one thing that you can do for your own emotional and mental health. It's so simple in terms of communicating it, but it's very difficult to do. And this is true, I've noticed, universally. So there are some things I'll talk about that are not universal, but this one is. And I have noticed this across cultures, across countries, across the world, both when I practiced, but also when I traveled. We just seem to struggle desperately as humans with accepting ourselves and loving ourselves in the face of whatever, no matter what we did yesterday or 15 years ago. But it is truly the only step that needs to take place. Because if you think about it, if you value yourself, if you think about something at home that you value right now, everybody take a moment and just think of something. Maybe it's a necklace, maybe it's another piece of jewelry, maybe it's something, maybe it's a particular electronic device, or maybe, I don't know, piece of furniture, what have you. Something that you value. Would you throw it around? Would you shove it in a drawer without thinking twice and just kind of fling it in there? Would you let the kids drop ketchup all over it or whatever it is? No, of course not. You would put it away very nicely. You'd keep it very securely. You value that thing. So it's the same thing with ourselves. If we value ourselves, we want to treat ourselves with the very same kind of self-respect. And when we do that, if you really think about it, it's quite common sense, because when we value something, when we value ourselves, you will naturally take the steps that are necessary to take care and nurture that thing. To stick with the metaphor of a nice necklace that was given to you maybe by your beloved grandfather, you're going to polish that necklace. You're going to make sure that it's tucked away somewhere well. You're going to take care of it. You're going to wear it and be proud. It's the very same thing with ourselves. We will work on ourselves. We will develop ourselves. We will learn new things. We will nurture. We will grow. We will move forward just naturally by virtue of loving ourselves without any conditions at all. And we are the only people who can do that for ourselves. Truly, children can do it, and pets, as well. They don't care what you do, they love you no matter what. And children will do that for you too for a while. They will love you no matter what. But after a certain point, even they can't do that. No one can give you unconditional love except yourself. So it is extremely important. And I would also add, in addition to self-love, other love. And this is just my way of saying, be kind. You know, whenever we have the choice, be kind. Kindness does not mean that we like everybody, does not mean that we hang out with everybody, does not mean we accept the things that people do. It does not mean that we even have any contact or even know the people. Kindness just comes from a certain way in which we're approaching self-respecting humans at the most basic level and upwards. All right, the last slide, or the last point that I was going to show you is sort of what I saved for the end, which is this purpose of life that I think that we all kind of sometimes wonder at some point, what is the purpose? You know, what is the meaning? What are we really, what's the most important thing? And I truly believe, I think it's just to enjoy life. That is it. The purpose of life is to enjoy your life. I'm going to ask everybody, and if you'd like, please feel free to comment in the chat box. Has anybody seen the movie Yes Day on Netflix with Jennifer Garner, Edgar something or other, the guy from The Undoing with Nicole Kidman, what have you? Anyway, it's a really cute movie about two parents who have these 3 kids, and they realize how kind of boring and unfun. I see people have watched it on the weekend and they liked it. It's a cute movie, whether you have kids or not. It's great. Because as adults, I think anyone can appreciate how we grow out of having fun, oddly. You know, I went out onto the roof with my brother at the age of 10, a slanted roof over the concrete, because we thought, and we're, you know, like we were 10 and 8, and we thought, this is great, you know, what great fun. The neighbors ratted us out, and we really got in quite big trouble. We probably would have been better if we'd actually fallen down and cracked our arms based on how much trouble we got into. But we thought it was fun, and I'm not suggesting that kind of fun, but it's that attitude of I refuse not to have fun in my life, maybe not every moment of the day. And this movie is about these parents who realize that they say no to everything because that is kind of at least one way of keeping human beings alive, and that's what it is when you are parents. Your first and foremost role is to keep the kids alive. And they decide that for one day they have to say yes to everything. And I thought, I'm going to do this in my family. I mean, there's a few ground rules, obviously, but I'm going to do this because even for me, even for us, that like it's just so habitual. It's become so ingrained in how we live that we stop considering the possibilities of really, so what? Like we become on autopilot in how we respond. So it's so important. Like, what are you doing? Ask yourself, what are you doing to enjoy your life? Very, very important. I also strongly suggest that you spend at least one moment of the day in complete alone time and silence, and focus on your relationships with other people. If this past year has taught us anything, it's the importance of relationships, and number 2, how weak we are in the Western world at nurturing them. And this is where I do think things are a little different. I've traveled a lot, and I have lived in different countries, and I just take an interest. It's a real passion of mine, different cultures and the psychology behind them. And the way that people live in certain countries is not the way we live here. And they're very relationship centric, and they work hard, but they also play hard, and there's quite a nice balance. And here we've just moved into this culture where we're chasing the wrong things. In my opinion, we're chasing acquisition of things and material things and status and wealth. And those are nice things to have. I'm not saying they're bad, but if we have to sacrifice our relationships to get them, they're just too costly. They're way too expensive. And so I strongly encourage that as well. Think about your relationships. Imagine yourself at 65, 75. Go and watch the Golden Girls if you need to on Prime TV and like see how you might feel at that age and who you would want around you and what you think is going to be most important in your life. Okay. I have about 3 minutes, I think, according to our agenda, so I'm going to wrap up. One of the things that I have been asked over the past year is if I believe that we will grow out of appreciating life and understanding how to savor it and knowing how to, like, will our senses be completely dulled down after this? And how do we have hope for the future? And I don't think so. I think, and this is how I create that hope for the future and that happiness, is I know that this is going to pass. And we all know it will, because nothing lasts forever, actually. Nothing good lasts forever, and the not so good doesn't last forever. Everything passes. So savor the good, and deal with the not so good as it comes, because it will pass, and savor the good because it too will pass. And, you know, one day we are going to be reveling in the world in a way, is my hope and my belief, in a way that we never have before. And I think it's going to be like crawling out of a long, dark shell, maybe some kind of version of solitary confinement, maybe confinement might be better, and appreciate the sights, the sounds, the tastes, the visions, the colors, the stimulation, the sound of glasses clinking, the sound of music playing in a festival. I think we're going to not only enjoy it more, I think we're going to know how to savor it. And I am really looking forward to that and that day. I don't think we'll be complaining as much. You know, we'll just be so happy to be on a plane. There'll be no time to complain about how cramped it is, hopefully. And, you know, we'll be able to be more patient, hopefully, with ourselves and with others. We'll know what it's like to wait online and not it be the end of the world, that it's not moving like that. I mean, I think that there are certain things that we're doing right now that are really going to benefit us down the road. We are at a crux of a major turning point for all of us. So talking about turning points and coming back full circle. What we're going through is frustrating, there's no question, yet it's unifying at the same time. You know, we have shown ourselves that, as we always have in human history, when things get tough, when the going gets rough, we come together for the most part. And we have learned the art of the pivot and the transition, and we have reconnected with our own innate resilience. We are living proof that we still have it. We never lost it, actually. We've shown ourselves that we can and will come together. We'll learn new things, and we will saddle up and get down to a new order of business and a new way of life, if that's what it takes. We are able to do that. And when life throws us the lemons, the very big lemons it's been throwing at us consistently now, indeed, we have everything inside of us already to turn that into lemonade. And we literally are the living proof of that. So I'm going to end with one last short story, and it is a bit of an urban legend or myth or what have you, but there are two twin boys, and they live in a home with a father who is it's a dysfunctional household. Dad's alcoholic. He's not functioning well. He can't hold down work. They live a very, very unstable childhood and life. So the brothers grow up, and they both turn into grown men. And one brother turns out exactly like dad. He's an alcoholic. He's living sort of on the fringe of society. He's not contributing. He can't hold down work. His relationships are in tatters. And then the other brother is the opposite. He has done well for himself. He has good relationships. He's got a good connection with his community, and he has a family, and he has a social circle. And they're asked, these two gentlemen, why are you the way that you are? And the first guy, the one who turned into his dad, the alcoholic, said, because of my father. And they asked the question to the other one, and he said the same thing, because of my father. So the moral of that is we all have a chance here. We're all going through this differently, but we're all going through at the macro level the same thing. And we have a chance here to make a radical change from this event. And it can go either way, just like that little story, but it's up to us. It's up to you, what you're going to do with this, and where you're how you're going to examine how you've lived your life, and how you decide you want to live your life now and for the rest of your life. And on that note, I am 2 minutes over time, but I think I made it. I'm going to stop here, and I thank you all for being such wonderful listeners.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Sharma. Wonderful presentation of hope and looking at things from a positive perspective. Very much enjoyed your session today.
Thank you.
The Community Foundation is proud of the impact that it makes through its carefully selected grants across all sectors, and are always pleased to shine a spotlight on organizations that have received vital grants. As you heard earlier today, when the pandemic took hold, organizations across our city stepped forward to support our community's most vulnerable citizens. Food insecurity was amplified, and the needs were significant. Food banks across the region played a critical role in supporting families as those needs escalated. The Mississauga Food Bank received multiple grants last year in support of our community, and we have invited Megan Nichols, Chief Executive Officer, to share their experience with you today. Please welcome Megan Nichols.
Thanks very much, Tom. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm just going to get my screen sharing set up here, and I'm off mute, so I've managed all the hurdles from the COVID-19 years we live in here, which feels sometimes like you're just trying to unmute your microphone and make your voice heard. So thanks to the Community Foundation of Mississauga for inviting me to participate today. And of course, to all of you who are supporters of the Community Foundation, thank you for your generous support through this particularly demanding year. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the difference that you've made possible for hungry kids, seniors, families, and all neighbors across the city during the COVID-19 pandemic. As Tom mentioned, the Community Foundation is a supporter of ours, and through some of the government programs that they facilitated this year, as well as support from the community itself, the Community Foundation provided the Mississauga Food Bank over $128,000 over the past year to support our programs in the community. So first, a quick intro. Who is the Mississauga Food Bank? We are the central food bank in Mississauga. We distribute food through a network of over 50 agencies, including neighborhood food banks, food pantries, meal and snack programs, and other emergency food programs. And we also coordinate this network of agencies to ensure the right programs are available in the right neighborhoods where the need is greatest, and that everyone has equitable access to food across our city. So this is a map showing you the 9 neighborhood food banks in our network. They serve hungry neighbors based on your postal code, where people live in the city. And they are the primary source of food for people looking for food here in Mississauga. So you can see how far reaching the impact is across the community, serving every neighborhood from Malton to Meadowvale to Mineola. There's a food bank available to serve folks who live in those communities. And then in addition to serving through our regular distribution model through those 50 agencies, we also have an emergency food bank at our warehouse, because the financial impact of COVID was felt so quickly and so devastating for so many of our neighbors. We wanted to make food available as easily as possible. Another program we operate is our Food Bank to Home delivery program that serves homebound neighbors, whether they're seniors, those with a disability, those who are pregnant or parenting young children and aren't able to travel to a food bank, or due to illness or lack of childcare, or many of those other reasons that life kind of got turned upside down during the pandemic. We saw a tremendous demand for this service, which we really had to expand rapidly. We had launched it shortly before the pandemic kicked off in late 2019, and I'm so thankful that we had those few months of experience. But when the pandemic started, we had 42 households that were members in this program receiving home deliveries. And at the peak of the pandemic, at the peak of, the stay-at-home restrictions where many services were still closed and fear was really at its height, we were serving over 1,100 households receiving their delivery of food right to their home by volunteers. And several of the grants we received to the Community Foundation this year went towards supporting this program specifically. It would not have been nearly as successful or able to serve as many households in our city without your support. So we've been in the COVID-19 pandemic for just over a year now. Last March, when all of this hit us, I don't think any of us could have imagined the impact it would have on our community, let alone the entire world. And so a year ago, the Mississauga Food Bank was distributing food for just shy of 3 million meals a year, about 2.7 million meals. This year, we've already surpassed food for 4.7 million meals distributed just here in the city of Mississauga. Since March last year, we have provided food for over 30,000 unique Mississauga residents. That's 61% more than the previous year. And we've seen a huge increase in first-time users of the food bank. Almost 8,000 people came to one of these agencies for the first time in the past year. And this is only possible because of the support we received from the community. Before this year, where there's been some special government giving to support people in need during the pandemic, we received very little funding from the pandemic and rely on the generosity of our community in order to be able to do what we do. The pandemic has impacted us profoundly. And for many of us, it has been an inconvenience. But for our neighbors who were already living paycheck to paycheck, the results have been absolutely devastating. And what I really want to stress when I have the opportunity to talk about our work in the community is that these numbers that I talk about represent real people, represent our neighbors who are turning to a local food bank, to a neighborhood food bank for support, often when they've really reached the end of their rope. You know, and one such of those neighbors is our neighbor Edward, who you can see here. Edward's a single senior in our community. Senior or single adult households now make up the largest percentage of food bank users across Canada. Over half of all food bank households, or households using a food bank, are a single adult trying to make it on their own. And so Edward is one of those folks. Also, he's a senior, and he's been using his neighborhood food bank for over 15 years. Now he also participates there as a volunteer, which has been a meaningful way for him to give back to the community who supported him. And we're proud of stories like this because it shows what a significant impact this has made for someone for over 15 years, but also they've been able to inspire a sense of community among volunteers and neighbors we serve, to provide a place for people like Edward to be connected, to receive food that not just is a necessity for life, but also is a source of nourishment beyond just calories in and calories out, in community with others who have the same focus. So I want to say thank you, our staff, our volunteers. You know, we had such brave volunteers in the last year who, when the pandemic hit and people were being asked to stay at home, were so proud to volunteer for an essential service. Our staff, we had t-shirts made that said, "We've always been essential," and take it as a point of pride that we are considered essential services here in our community. But most importantly, it's our neighbors who thank you. These pictures you see here, and we don't use any stock photos. You know, you can buy, if you don't know what a photo is, you can buy kind of images off the internet that you just use and they're of a model somewhere. These are your actual neighbors who live in our communities, who've told us their stories, who've said, yes, please share my story, share my picture, so that you can raise support for others like me and help to change the community we live in so that others don't have to suffer the way I have. You know, and I talk all the time, it takes all of us to ensure that no one in Mississauga goes hungry. And that includes organizations like the Community Foundation. It includes the partners that support them, the individuals and the community groups that support us at the food bank, to ensure that none of these neighbors have to go without food. So thank you very much for your support, and thank you for listening today.
Great. Thank you very much, Megan. It was wonderful to see you today and hear from you. And certainly your organization is one near and dear to my heart. A few years back, pre-pandemic, I had an opportunity to visit your group and be educated about some of the very innovative things you've done, like your aqua grow facility. You've got fresh fish, fresh vegetables, fresh lettuce, etc. It's just amazing stuff. So way to go. Congratulations. And I appreciate hearing from you today. I've been a longtime friend and volunteer with the Community Foundation Mississauga, and this dovetails nicely with my work at Asante Wealth Management, where I have helped to build philanthropy and community through my work. It is such a great pleasure to act as a corporate partner of the Community Foundation. At Asante, we feel strongly that this support definitely goes towards making the Community Foundation's important work in our community possible. On behalf of Asante Wealth Management, it is now my pleasure to introduce to you our closing speaker, Daniel Lewis. Daniel is an acclaimed high energy and high content inspirational speaker. He is winner of the Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award and Global Entrepreneurship Week Ambassador of Canada. Daniel knows a little something about business. He shares his insights and provides methods of how companies of any size can benefit by empowering their employees to think and work like an entrepreneur. Using his story of experiencing a near fatal incident to becoming an award-winning entrepreneur, Daniel's dynamic presentation offers a unique perspective on life in hopes of inspiring purpose, productivity, and excellence in others. Daniel Lewis is a proud founder of Tea by Daniel. He and his wife were invited to serve tea to His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, during his 2017 Royal Tour of Canada. Daniel's people-focused outlook on entrepreneurship and his experiential business tactics have garnered him and his company nationwide recognition. He has received many honors and awards, including the 2017 Top 40 Under 40 Award for Entrepreneurs. Please welcome Daniel Lewis.
Hello, and thank you so much, Tom. Can you hear me okay, first off? Yeah, awesome. Yep. Thank you so much for having me today, to the Community Foundation of Mississauga, to all these sponsors. It's just a great event and so needed during this time. Just us picking each other up, inspiring each other. Dr. Sharma's presentation was so inspiring, and so many correlations between mine as well. So I know we're on the right track. So today, I hope to add to the inspiration and to all the energy that's going on in here today. I'm just gonna go ahead and share my screen. And once we've done that, let's jump right into it. Okay, assuming everyone can see my screen, interrupt me if that is not happening. But if so, who is this GQ model here, and what can we talk about, and what can we share? What insights can we all share with each other today? GQ model was a push, but yes. So my name is Daniel Lewis, as mentioned, and together with my lovely wife, we co-founded a company called Tea by Daniel. And that's what we've mainly been doing over the last 10 years, building this tea company. But it's not just a tea company that we built. We were really learning all this value about people, about community. And it's through these experiences that I want to share some insights with you today. The business journey, as you know, is not always up. There's some times where it's down, very down. And I find that through the ups and downs, we were able to find out a creative way to push through. And when you look at the global pandemic right now, again, this is adversity. These are things that are coming against us, our businesses, our families, the regular way that we live our lives. But can we use creativity as a tool against adversity? I'd like to believe so, and hopefully I can get you on my side with that belief at the end of this presentation. So the art of creativity, how to use creativity as a tool in times of adversity. So what we're going to cover today are our 4 main takeaways. So first, we'll be talking about the POP, which I like to call the power of personality. Then we'll touch on the 5 laws of creativity. We'll move on to the attitude, and we'll end off with the Slingshot Theory. So the founders of Tea by Daniel, my lovely wife Renata, and myself, very excited. I don't know if it's about the tea or being in love, I don't know, but just really excited. So how did this all come together? Tell me this story. Let's jive. So many of you, could probably correlate with this, and you've started your career as a rapper thinking that, maybe this was going to be the way that you'd get your big break. So I know that you can all agree with me there. But I started out right out of high school thinking that I was destined for stardom and that rapping was going to be the thing that takes me there. I saw some degree of success, I guess, but it panned out a little differently. And it turns out that my great calling was not to be the best rapper in the world. So I did what any of you would do, and I moved on to become a songwriter. Grew out the afro, got a guitar, and said, I am going to write songs. And I actually registered as a Canadian songwriter. I was we are the people who pitch songs to some of the A-list artists like the Justin Biebers, Lady Gagas, in hopes that they will purchase a song, carving out my journey. When that didn't work, I decided to move on to the next best thing, which was rock and roll. And unfortunately, folks, there's no backstory there because it didn't work. But that was my musical journey. But what I wanted to highlight from this very early stage in the story was what I was going through, whether good or bad, whether successful or not. I was carving out a personality, these characteristics, a way of who I am and the type of person that I would become. So we all go through life experiences, and now we have this personality that's based on our views about life, about people, about opportunity. I didn't know that that was going to be something that would become valuable to me later on when I would get into the world of business. But sure enough, we don't always have it all figured out. So when we're in the bad times, when we're in the exploration times and we're trying different things, I would quickly say a great perspective is to extract what we can out of every situation. Yes, even a global pandemic. What can we learn about ourselves? What can we learn about our families? What can we learn about the companies we work for? There is always something good that can be extracted. For me, in my music journey, it turned out to be personality and knowing how to interact and communicate messages to people. So let's dive into the POP, the power of personality, and how you can use that in your day-to-day work, in your home, in your business, in the world of entrepreneurship, the power of personality. So fast forward, and yes, I skipped a lot of the story, but eventually I came up with this idea to start a tea company, heavily inspired by the great David's teas of the world, Teopia's at the time, Tivana's, and all the amazing tea companies that were out there. And I'll explain near the end or in the Q&A why it was tea. But I had this idea. And my idea was that I am going to build a tea company that is just so rebelistic. We are going to, instead of going, the Big Ben, the afternoon high tea, we are going to be a fun tea company, like Disney World meets Willy Wonka with some Calvin Klein in there, because I like to, pretend that I'm a model, but we're going to make this really, really fun, experiential tea company. This is the idea, and I just think that it would be a great idea. I think people would love it. So I decided that that's what I was going to do. When I talked about this idea with my friends and those in the tea community, it wasn't necessarily well received. Tea had been very traditional for hundreds of years, and there was a set way, and it didn't seem like there was room for an idea like Willy Wonka meets Calvin Klein and has a little bit of Disney. It just seemed really weird. So it was met with some adversity. It was met with some backing away, and I don't know, I don't get it. And that took a toll on me, as doubting and negative words often do. I started, instead of looking at what I thought was a creative idea, I started looking at my inefficiencies and all the things that might happen to cause this idea not to work. So it was a nightmare, Dan's nightmare. I started thinking about this. Unfortunately, I dropped out of high school. So I kind of squandered my high school education. That started to haunt me. I started thinking, maybe I don't really have a good concept. People are not going to understand it. Like tea, Willy Wonka. How does a rapper go to selling tea? Don't get it. Why tea? It doesn't make sense. You didn't study business. All these things that would cause it not to work. And folks, unfortunately, the nightmare came true. As you can see, I went to H&M. I got a business shirt. And my lovely wife and I went to Service Ontario, registered a very marginal business, and set out on the Tea by Daniel journey. Our products look like bath soaps, not a lot of creativity, not a lot of enthusiasm. It was business as usual, and I started to think maybe this is going to fail. Happy, but not happy. And sometimes we find ourselves in this place in life. I'm happy, yes, I started the business. I'm happy, I have the job, but I'm not really happy. There's something that's missing, and I felt that huge. So I had a conversation with my dad, and my parents, they inject so much knowledge, so many golden nuggets every time I sit and talk with them. And my dad taught me this amazing takeaway that I apply to everything in my life. And Dr. Sharma so profoundly touched on this. And it's found in children. And it's the difference between being childish and childlike about every situation, whether business, finance, relationships, your job. There's a difference between being childish and childlike. What is that difference, Daniel? The difference, to be childish is simple. It's to be silly and immature. So if I'm to be childish during a global pandemic, I would not adhere to the rules like social distancing, wearing a mask, and all the other things that were set out to, keep us safe. Just silly and immature. But what does it mean to be childlike? To be childlike, we see these traits of fearlessness, innocence, trusting, just, I don't know, but I trust you. I don't think that you will hurt me, so I trust you. Forgiving, even when you do hurt me. I see my two sons, or when they're with their cousins. 1 minute, they're arguing, give it to me, oh, you're not my friend, and all that stuff. And then 2 seconds later, they're playing in the backyard and just having fun time like nothing happened. It's like, wow, but we carry grudges for years, like Dr. Sharma talked about with her neighbor. So we lose that forgiving nature. just simple. Are you simple enough to succeed in business? Or is this a very complicated process to be a CEO? Excuse me. But could I just be simple enough to still have the title, but still be unchanged, still appreciate and respect the people that work with me on my team? Unbiased, not, using biases against people in the community, in the world, and a sense of naivety that will just help you not be too one-sided in anything. These are characteristics that we find in children, and that is called being childlike. Now, when I was younger, growing up in school, I had these qualities, these characteristics. This was my personality. But as time went on, I started to lose that. And by the time I landed in the world of business, it had almost disappeared altogether. And I think what my dad was saying is that you need to go back to that childlike Daniel that we know, the power of personality. So always take your mom and dad's advice, folks, if it's good. And I decided to rebrand the tea company immediately. So back to the Willy Wonka, back to the Disney World. Let's build a fun tea company like the one I saw in my imagination before hitting the trade shows and getting into the world of business, or talking to people who didn't get it or see it or agree that, there was room for a concept like this. Rebranded the company, added a little more splash, hence the GQ. So when you look at me in 2011 and my wife standing at a trade show hoping people would try our Japanese sencha, we were not that enthused. The zest wasn't there. The spark wasn't there. But when I took my parents' advice, it was a very different 2013 for our business, for our personal lives, and even for the community in which we were serving. We built together this fun experience called Tea by Daniel that people could come into, and if they were having a bad day, they knew that the retail magicians, which we called ourselves, were going to make magic for them. Just like Disney World, just like Willy Wonka, there's always a surprise happening at Tea by Daniel. And according to the city of Brampton, we had one of the biggest grand openings of any business in Brampton's history. Why? That is not because I'm handsome, folks, because that's obvious. It is because they saw something magical, and it's not a Daniel thing. I don't want us to think that, oh, you have a big personality, so it's a you thing, but I'm not like that. No, it's an everyone thing. We all have personalities. It's finding where you can use yours to your advantage. My staff, the retail magicians that were working with me, they were all showing their different personalities. My wife is the opposite of me, but a great listener. She was always there to hear customers' ups, downs, celebrations, and thus people felt an authentic experience when they interacted with our company and with us. It grew from this, it became this strategy where we first found customers. If you walked into our tea shop and you bought something, you were a customer. But our goal was to create you or turn you or journey you into becoming a follower and a friend and a fan and even family. And that's what started to happen in the culture of our business. We did not have customers. And to this day, we've done a lot of pivoting and changing our business model, but we don't have customers. We have friends, followers, and fans. Can we institute the same things in our business, in our lives, in our companies? Yes, we can. The power of personality. It turns out that personality is just as contagious as some of the negative things that are going on in society. You can be positively contagious with hope, with inspiration, with just everything that's good. It doesn't just have to be a bad thing. When people see you having zest for life on the job, when people see you in your business in a tough time, still being creative and still going out there in the community and doing good, some people catch on to that and start to implement the same things. And that's what I'm hoping even here with this presentation today. So we started to win awards. We started to make a name for ourselves in the community. And I got a show on Rogers called Today and Tomorrow Begin with Tea. So moving along, we started to headline newspapers, the power of personality at work. We started getting invited to some really cool events like the ESPY Awards in Hollywood, where honestly, I could fall off my chair and faint right now. I was given the opportunity to serve AJ from the Backstreet Boys. Now, I know you could put your virtual hands up if there's any Backstreet Boy fans out there. Typically, if we weren't so tight for time, I would sing their song to you, but I don't really want you to leave the call yet. So we'll pass that. But yes, an amazing opportunity, and opportunities will present themselves to us when we have the personality to welcome it, no matter what that means. Whether it's a happy-go-lucky, an intentive, a creative, whatever your personality is like, use it to your advantage. It's called the pop. We started to meet some more celebrities, investors, great opportunities started to present themselves. It helps that I look like Puff Daddy and my wife looks like J-Lo, but I mean, it was just, going with the motions. So this star power, this personality was at work, and these amazing opportunities were happening for us. And that little idea of building a fun, fashionable tea company was starting to materialize because we were welcoming it with open arms, always with a smile on our face. I even got to meet Drake. I mean, like, power of positive thinking. It's great. And then this happened. In 2017, my wife and I got an email from the federal government, the RCMP, requesting our presence to serve His Royal Highness tea. And it's an amazing story how it all culminated. But what I want to derive from that is from back in 2011, when we were doubting ourselves, that we didn't have something special, and that, really, we're just who we are, right? We don't really have anything that can make us successful, don't have the business knowledge, don't have the money to build this business, and questioning ourselves when really we had this personality, this zest for life, and the hope and inspiration to make this business succeed, and great people around us that we were willing to listen to. And that's what we needed. Now, I want us at this point to look in our own lives. Yes, COVID is going on and it's terrible. And I wish the best for you and your families, and that we all stay safe. And my condolences to those we have lost. How do we build something better during this time? We have to look at what's around us. We have to look at who's around us. We have to appreciate the personalities and the diversities that surround us in our communities. This is the only way to find success in business, in community, in humanity. It all comes down to getting to know the person or the pop. So Prince Charles, His Royal Highness, became a repeat customer, ordering more tea a week later to the Buckingham Palace, and wrote us a handwritten letter a few months later on how much he's enjoying the tea and wishing us best for our business. I asked if I can join the royal family. It didn't work out. So what is the whole point with this power of personality thing, Dan? Is this just a feel-good thing? Yeah, but it does come with a secret that I'd love to share with you today. And it's the secret to succeeding in business. It's in the first two letters of business. What is it? Be you. Yes, there's no big, scientific, there's great things. You got to be good with finances. You got to be good with accounting. You got to be good with strategy and marketing and branding. And all these things are very important. But the secret to succeeding in business and in life is to be you, be yourself, be that true you who you know you can be. And that's it. Be you. The moment you take the personality out of the business will fail. 100%. Ask Apple, what does Apple have to do when they get rid of the personality, which was Steve Jobs? You got to hire him back. And that's the only way the company is going to grow, because it was a personality, a passion, a set of ideals and values that built the company to what it is today. It wasn't just strategies and business plans. Those helped, but there was a personality, there was a mind behind it. So that's the pop, folks, the power of personality. And I hope you can use that in your day-to-day life, in your business. The next takeaway we want to talk about is the 5 laws of creativity. The 5 laws. What are creatives doing in an adverse time, or really in general? Number 1, creatives, they are too foolish to be scared. When I went over to Party City, 1999, jumped into a costume and hit Main Street, running around with tea samples. That was the only time we were getting attention when we just started our business. Before, all the Starbucks customers were walking by our shop like we didn't exist. But then I had to take on that childlike attitude and be too foolish and to be scared, or what people would say about this grown man in a lion's costume. Now, am I saying go to work tomorrow in a lion costume? No. I mean, that would be cool, but no. What I'm saying is put your best self forward. Be fearless like that child who, yes, there's danger, but they're not only focused on the danger, they're focused on the opportunity. So they're too foolish to be scared. So here's a great dilemma to share with you. We usually don't find great success until we challenge what is normal. However, we usually don't challenge what is normal until we find great success. And that presents a dilemma, because now I'm not sure if I should challenge the norms first, or if I need to find success and then challenge the norms. I'm almost 100% sure that it's the people who challenge the norm that find success first. And then once they're successful, they can always challenge norms. So choose which side of the coin you'd like to be on. And I would really encourage us here today to just challenge norms instead of waiting for success to do that. Number 2, in the laws of creativity, creatives, they don't only focus on change. They focus on influencing change. When we set out to deliver exceptional customer service in our business, it wasn't just so that we have great customer service. We wanted to set the standard for service, period, in our city, in anywhere we were operating, even online. We believed that customers needed to be treated like amazing rock stars for coming in and supporting businesses, period. I believe that worldwide. So I'm not only trying to have good customer service in my store. I want to set an inspiring standard that everyone who's in the customer service industry can follow. And that's what creatives do. They don't just focus on their own development. They focus on what can I influence in the world. That's what Coco Chanel did. She didn't just change fashion for her own wardrobe. She inspired fashion for women worldwide. And we see it today. Creatives, they have a unique sense of perception and perspective. I often show this picture and say, what do you see to the audience? Get all kinds of things. And there's no wrong answers. I see a tree. I see bark. Some say, I see peace. I see a forest. I see mist. We see all kinds of things. The creative is able to look very deep and say, yes, there's a tree and there's all those things, but I can cut it down. I can shape it up. I could stain it, and I can create value to someone. Not that those other things aren't value, like peace or just a tree, but in terms of business, they see this thing, they see what can I get, how can I extract value from it? That's what their perspective sees. And now we have a chair people could sit on, relax, and enjoy because somebody had a different perspective about something. So again, there's a global pandemic going on, but what do you see? An opportunity to pivot, an opportunity to build out a digital side of your business that you never had before. Like that's what we did. So it's all about perception and perspective. I see time's coming close. Let's move along. When they say no, when people say no, you hear, I dare you, just like J.K. Rowling. Where would Harry Potter series be if she gave up after the 11th time or the 5th time? Howard Schultz, rejected by 242 banks. Where would we get our macchiatos and our PSLs? And if I listened to the people that said, you have a crazy concept, where would T by Daniel be? And where would this 10 years of business experience come from? But I heard, I dare you. Number 5, there is no number 5, but you and I can create one. There's no rules really to creativity, or no limits. I shouldn't say there's no rules, there's no limits. We can make any rule we want. That's what it means to be creative. And this is what helps us through adverse times. Come up with new things, be innovative. It's the engine of ingenuity. Creative people invest in creativity with your staff, with your team, with your employees, with your community. Invest in creativity. Do things that will inspire creativity, and you'll see that pay off tenfold. Ask yourself, what rules in your industry do you accept as fact, and why do you follow them? If the answer is, that's the way it's always been, it's going to be hard to find the next level of success. It's the ability to question authority without disrespect that makes the creatives more likely to be successful. So ask those questions in your job, in your business, in your community, and in the world. Here's what we know about the future, lovely people. Nothing. And we have full creative control on how the future should look because of that. I'm going to wrap it up really quickly because I see that the time is coming close, and I'm going to finish off by talking about the attitude in Slingshot Theory. The attitude is what separates the losers from the winners. And that means there could be, maybe you're starting a small business and you're not that big, not seeing that much income. That doesn't mean you have to just have the mindset of a small business who's not making any money or having any customers. You can still be a cat, but have a Simba's mentality. And that's something I learned very early in business. The entrepreneur's attitude has to be bigger than their circumstance. And that's the same in our community. I'm seeing, like Dr. Sharma said, the days we're back in the parks, we're back in the concerts, we're back in the malls, enjoying each other's company, because I want to be bigger than what I'm seeing. And that's an attitude switch. I said this quote when I was in music. When nobody cared, I would sing it to the chairs. And eventually, the chairs were filled. You got to see it. Do you give the same zest even when things are adverse and things aren't going your way? That's what makes them line up with your attitude and with what you put out there in the world. Let's move along. I don't know if you're going to have time to do this in the chat, but really quickly, choose which one you like. Is it the Canadians, Toronto Maple Leafs when it comes to a hockey team? When it comes to music artists, are you a believer or are you with Mick Jagger? If I was to pay for an all-inclusive vacation for you, would it be palm trees or would it be a snowy cottage with some tea by Daniel? Shameless plug. Where would you rather live? Canada, this is obvious, Canada or the USA? And what do you choose today and in life? A good attitude or a bad attitude? Often, people never put up their hands or choose one here, or they always choose good attitude, because sometimes we believe attitude is not a choice, just like everything else, but it is a choice. Every single day, with every situation, just like Dr. Sharma said, with that over-the-fence communication, it is a choice. The problem is not the problem. The problem is our attitude about the problem, says Captain Sparrow. End quote. A bad attitude is like a flat tire. If you don't change it, you won't go anywhere. And lastly, folks, the Slingshot Theory. As mentioned, I went in 2009 through a very near tragic incident where I was the victim of a nearly fatal stabbing on account of what lyrics I said in one of my songs when I was in the music industry. And that incident here, stabbed here in my side, in my lung, close to my lungs, 4 or 5 stab wounds, I nearly lost my life. But in the hospital during that dark, gloomy time, that's when I found out the power of impact. That's when I found out and had that aha moment that it's about the time living and who we impact and how we impact, because that's the one thing that's not guaranteed is time. So it's making the best of every situation. And that's where we get the Slingshot Theory. My dad made a slingshot and said, let's say you don't go through any setbacks in life. When you go to take the next step forward, this is what it will look like. And he actually did it. And the elastic band, or he made one, it fell right down on the ground. But what about when we go through setbacks like global pandemic, businesses not taking off, not profitable in 3 years, health risk, unforeseen death in the family? All these are called setbacks. But if we change our perspective about them, when we go to take the next step in life and he let that thing go, our setbacks are designed to propel us further ahead. Folks, hold on to hope. And I hope you enjoy the presentation today and tomorrow. Begin with T. Thank you so much.
Great, Daniel. Thank you so much. Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Lots of energy, enthusiasm. I love your attitude. I did choose the right attitude. I did choose Leafs too, though. So I think we need to train the Leafs a little bit in terms of the attitude department.
Nice.
Anyway, great presentation. Really enjoyed it. On behalf of everyone gathered here today, I would like to thank our speakers, both Dr. Natasha Sharma and Daniel Lewis, 2 excellent presentations. And we're so glad that you could bring your inspirational messages to us all here today. There'll be messages there that we've got in here that we'll be thinking about for some time to come yet. This spectacular session was made possible today by our sponsors. Please join me in thanking our speaker sponsors, Liuna, Local 183, and TD Wealth, our gift sponsor, Charity Accounts, and title sponsor, Novo, Nordisk, Canada. A few of the last housekeeping items before we wrap up. There are several prizes that have been offered today, including Tea by Daniel and the Kindness Journal by Dr. Sharma, as well as a lovely gift basket. The names of the winners were drawn randomly and are put on the screen before you now. The foundation team will be in touch with you to put these into your hands. Now, for each ticket that was purchased for today's event, those ticket holders will receive Dr. Natasha Sharma's 8-hour therapy course, courtesy of gift-sponsored charity accounts. The foundation team will be emailing a code to the name of all ticket holders with instructions of how you can access this valuable resource. As well, today's presentation has been recorded, and you will find a link to YouTube through the Community Foundation's website. Our next event is the For Community Golf Tournament. This annual event is already in the planning stages and takes place on Tuesday, June 29th at Glencairn Golf Club in Milton. Please hold the date. We cannot wait to host you at this spectacular course. We now come to the end of today's program. We are grateful to you for attending and hope that you are leaving for the better of it. Thanks to our team of volunteers and staff, to our speakers, and to you, our guests. Thank you for making space in your day to join us. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Thank you.